I'm Sally Jarvie. I'm a counsellor at The Haven. I work with people who are diagnosed with breast cancer and are going through treatment. A diagnosis of breast cancer is life-changing. The world isn't as it was before. We have to learn to manage lots of intense feelings and difficult things along the journey of treatment. So we have gathered some women here today to talk about these particular issues in the hope that this will help you feel less alone with what you may be going through at the moment. How did you manage the fear that must have felt overwhelming at that time?
Yes, I think it was fear, but I actually experienced a kind of frozen reaction. I just felt as if everything was standing still while I was waiting to hear what the result was. And then when I saw the consultant, I was very aware that I was actually feeding him positive statistics, hoping that he would then say, yes, I'm sure you're going to be one of those survivors. And it did hit me a lot on the way back home. You know, my husband had come with me, and he was being very supportive. And but I remember thinking, yes, I've said all those positive things, but then the fear began to grow, and that frozen response. Yeah.
Well, for me, it was like get my head down and get through it, and get through all the operations and the chemo and the radiotherapy, whatever. And then you finish that, and I was put on tamoxifen after that, and they give you the tamoxifen, and then they say, well, we'll see you in 3 months or 4 months, or however long it is. And you think, oh, you know, you're suddenly out there on your own, and that's quite, it's like your safety net's gone a bit, and it's quite a scary sort of thing. I mean, fear does run through this, and you manage to control it, but I find there's always a bit of fear there, and you'll get a pain, and sometimes I think I'm doing really well, I've got this, I've got it sussed now, and then I'll get a pain in my shoulder or my leg, and it dissolves, but all my bravado dissolves within an instant, and I'm terrified again.
So what do you think helped you all? Because it is such a horrible time, isn't it?
Having my family and friends around me really helped. I mean, when I first got my diagnosis, I was still going to work. So, being in work, just having my mind, I know it's maybe a bit of a strange thing to say, that my mind, it took my mind off it. It was still there, but it was, talking to people was a distraction. Even if I was talking about the cancer, it was still a distraction, if that makes sense. And it wasn't until it's those moments where I was on my own that I felt myself sinking. So yeah, having my family around me, having my friends around me, everybody was fantastic. I had people on my doorstep the evening that I was diagnosed. People were so supportive. I started to question, why me? But then that quickly went. It was like, well, there's so many of us with it, that it's not anything that's, that why me kind of went very quickly.
I think it's so important to be able to share what you're going through. I found online groups have been very supportive. If you've ever got a query, they're always there to help. And yeah, it's amazing how quickly though your body learns to forget what. I finished chemo 3 months ago, and you have this new lease of life, and it's amazing, the survival instinct sort of kicks in.
What particular issues came up for you during treatment?
At the time, as you're going through treatment, you kind of live in the present, and you take each day as it comes, and you take each treatment, and you kind of have a different pain threshold for different parts of your treatment. And it's only now, as I'm coming to the end, I've just got a week left of radiotherapy, that I look back and I look at footage or photos and I think, oh my goodness, that does actually look quite extreme and quite terrifying, but you just get on with it, and And yeah, it's quite something to look back and think,
Yes.
God, I've got through that. I did it.
That's what I went through.
Yeah.
I can remember a stage where my mind was sort of whirring out of control almost at times, with the periods through certain days, and it would be overwhelming. And just to sort of anchor yourself in one day, saying, today's okay, I can manage today, and I'm here now, and not trying to let all the awful things that might happen and might not happen, just go out of control. It's quite tricky. I did have counselling here, and that helped as well. I spoke to a counsellor here, and that really helped.
It's important too not to think that everyone says you have to fight whatever illness it is that you have, and it's important to realise that there are many different ways to fight an illness, and the most effective way I've found is to do what your body is telling you to do. If you are having a bad day, then, as you say, accept it and say, okay, this is a bad day, I can't do this, I can't do that, I need to just let it be. And but because forcing yourself to carry on and do something when you're not up to it usually has bad repercussions in my experience.
You're right, you feel like you've got this safety net underneath you, and then after you've had your last treatment, you just feel like, I'm kind of on my own now with the medication that they've given you. So it was really good that I was seeing my therapist on a regular basis, and I was able to explore those feelings that I had. When I see an advert of cancer research or breast cancer, or I hear of somebody dying, I just, I'm just tune into that. And I think through the counselling, it kind of taught me to try and take a step back and to really think about how I'm feeling today. So when I get those fears, I say to myself, well, look, how are you feeling? And if I'm feeling okay, then I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling good today.
I think what's important is to recognise the bad days and just allow yourself to have the bad days. Be a bit kind to yourself. And initially I'd be battling against these symptoms, and which sort of did get progressively worse. You do go down a bit downhill. You start up here, and by the time you've got your last session, I had 8 sessions, so by the time I got to the last one I was pretty low. But sort of halfway through that I thought, I can embrace that. I can just think, well, that's okay, this is a bad day, and not be so hard on myself, and just sort of accept it. And that did help in a funny sort of way. I don't know why it helped, but it did help. Just to think, it's okay. This is a nasty thing that's happening to you. It's nasty drugs they're putting into you. You're going to feel like that. And if you have to have 2 days in bed afterwards, it's okay to do that.
3 days after I was diagnosed, I got a puppy by accident, and that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, having this unconditional like Prozac on legs. And that, just having, because sometimes you do just want to be on your own when you're in pain, and probably a day hasn't gone by where I haven't cried, but it's not necessarily from being sad. It's kind of, someone will send me something in the post and I'll be like, you're really overwhelmed with kindness. And
So how did you cope with changes in your body?
because it's so visually obvious something's not right, you've got no eyebrows, no eyelash, no hair, that I kind of milked it. So if I was on a bus and I remember sitting on the top deck and I opened the window because I wanted some fresh air in the middle of chemo. I had my hat on, it was winter time, and this guy got on the bus and he went to close the window, and I said, excuse me, can I have it open? I need some fresh air. And I said, do you mind? And he said, yeah, I do mind actually. So I stood up, took my hat off, and I said, I've got cancer and I need fresh air. And he went, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. So I think in that respect, it's like, you use your cancer card, you've earned it. So
I had a mastectomy on, I've got to remember which side, left side, and then I had a reconstruction. There was a gap before I had my reconstruction, was about 5 months later. I mean, I knew exactly what to expect, I knew exactly what they were going to do, but when you actually see that, it does take you back a bit. But, I mean, my husband was fine with it. He knew what was going to happen, obviously. I didn't mourn the loss of my breast in any way. I was glad, to be honest, to get rid of it, because I felt it had like this alien force or something in it that was making me very ill, which it did. I thought I'd mourn the loss of my breast more. I didn't. After the initial shock of seeing what it looks like, because they do cut you quite close, you get over it surprisingly quickly, actually. And I did have the reconstruction that was offered to me. And I'm glad I did it. But at the time, I thought, well, I don't mind if I don't. If it had been something to say you can't have the reconstruction for some reason, I think I would have been fine. I think we would have been fine, you know. It's a strange feeling though, because I was so relieved to get my breasts taken off in a way. I was almost saying, well, if it's going to help, take both of them, you know. So there's a sort of a bit of a desperation there, but that's not the big things actually. For me, it wasn't a big thing. Just like I said, the fear of it coming back is the big thing.
So I had long blonde hair and I decided to cut it all off, and then I threw a shaving head party, and so with about 15 friends, and I thought it was great fun, but I think they were a bit traumatised. But I found sort of owning it and being the sort of master of your own destiny really helps. Because it's not going to last forever, and it's for your own benefit, and there's amazing wigs out there.
As you say, you were quite well up until that point, and chemo then makes you ill, and you lose your hair, your body feels under attack.
You know, the impact that it can have on some people, you know, losing your hair. Even though it was obviously shocking for people around me to see, for me, that was the least of my worries. I was like you. I had long hair, and just coincidentally, a couple of months before I got my diagnosis, I cut my hair short. And then when I got my diagnosis, I thought, right, that's it, I'm just shaving it off, and I just went around with a bald head. And in fact, I remember the days when Sinead O'Connor was around, and I remember thinking, oh, I wonder what I'd look like with no hair, and I know now what I look like with no hair.
I didn't lose my hair. I had the operation and a course of radiotherapy. I must admit, when I came to the Haven, I felt that I'd somehow got off lightly when I heard other people's stories, but the Haven is quick to reassure you that your experience is your experience, and it's perfectly valid for you. So I remember feeling really proud of myself the first time I went on public transport, because I wanted to go to a particular concert, and it was almost at the end of my radiotherapy, but I was really terrified of being pushed or squeezed on the tube or on a bus, and I made sure that I went in a couple of hours earlier before the rush hour and so on, and I'd picked a nice spacious end seat for the concert and so on, and although I was really exhausted by the end of it, that was a huge achievement that I'd been able to do that.
It's been an amazing experience actually, because you learn things about your body you never knew, and beauty, and that just goes out the window, and it's quite liberating. It's almost like I kind of almost played a game. How ugly can I get today? And like just go out and not care. Just, you know, and a few people have mistaken me for a boy. Like I was on the train platform the other day, and this guy came up to me and was like, all right mate, and then I turned and he went, oh, I'm so sorry, and it's like, oh, it's quite fun to be this different person, and yeah. I mean, obviously it's not, you kind of don't feel as feminine as you would like, but...
So what impact do you think having cancer has had on your friends and family?
Tough for my daughter. She was 6 when I was diagnosed. And I did tell her that I sort of said, Mum's not very well, and I've got to have some nasty medicine which will make me sick, but it will make me better in the end as well. But I didn't say cancer to her. And I wish I had, because somebody at school said, oh, your mum's got cancer, you know, so that was... I regretted not doing that. But it was tough on her seeing me lose my hair and sort of just get a little bit worse each sort of week, and not to be able to do so much with her. Although I was pretty lucky really through the chemo. I mean, I didn't get any nasty infections. It was just it's just sort of quite arduous going through it, so and quite tiring. So that was tough. And the thing that she remembers was that when I had one of the tests, I think it's one of the ones that you have radioactive stuff put in you, I couldn't cuddle her. And even now she says, oh, I remember that. That's what she remembers more than anything, that I couldn't cuddle her. That was the week when you get a couple of weeks, you have all the tests. It was only for a few days, but she really remembered that. So I found it easier to talk in groups at the Haven with people that were a little bit removed.
sort of touching base with people helps, you know, just talking to people here today, knowing that people have gone through the same experiences and are experiencing some of the feelings that I'm still feeling has really helped. And yeah, being able to come in and touch base with people here at the Haven has been really nice.
I had a friend I met in the street a few weeks after I'd had the radiotherapy and so on, and we gave each other a little kiss on the cheek in greeting, and she was asking how I was, and I told her about the kind of radiotherapy that Eileen's just mentioned, and she backed away from me, rubbing her cheek. And my husband was with me, and we both laughed, but I thought, well, it's a good job I do feel okay about it, otherwise I'd have felt like a leper going around with a bell, don't touch me, don't touch me.
I've noticed on my online group, it's really hard for husbands, 'cause, you know, they find it hard to talk. It's quite a difficult subject, and I think it's incredible that
Yes,
the
and I
support
think
is here.
partners and family and friends often feel they have to be strong and positive. And it is really good that they can come here and they can have counselling sessions and get support to enable them to support their partners or friends who are going through cancer. So I think that's a really good point. At the end of treatment, often there's a process of having to make sense of what you've been through. What changes am I going to make in my life now? Or what am I going to do the same? Lots of questions.
My life has changed, the way I view things have changed, the way that I feel about things, the way I feel about work has changed. Your perspective just changes. For me, it's been a positive thing. I didn't want to have to go through cancer to feel this way, but I think often people do have to go through life-changing things for your perspective on life to change, and how important the here and now is.
Once I got cancer, that changed my perspective completely. And since I've had the cancer, although as Angela said, it's not something that you would wish on yourself, but it did give me a new lease of life, and it made me go on and make more of each day. Never take anything for granted, but then not get too down about thoughts of the future, but take one day at a time. And I've become much more active since recovering from the cancer.
So I haven't been able to go back to work. So my life's quite different now, but I've accepted that it's of the value of a different life, and a lot of positives that do come out of it. I am able to spend more time with my daughter, time that I couldn't spend with my son. So because I can't work now, I do have joint pain and certain side effects, but I can cope with those. It does give you perspective. It gives you a perspective on just enjoying your life here and now, and taking the pleasure out of the things you can take pleasure out of.
So if you can get through the treatment and the things that you've had to cope with, there's an inner confidence about your own strength, even though at times you might not have felt strong. In fact, sometimes probably felt very helpless. But that gives you a resilience.
I'm much happier now than I am this time last year, and it's bizarre. It's after being diagnosed, suddenly all my friends and family sort of all rallied round, and it kind of brought everyone together. And it definitely makes you reevaluate life, but it also restores your faith in humanity. And you realise how important relationships with other people are.
I remember noticing, it must have been sometime towards the end of last year, and I realised that I had forgotten that I'd had breast cancer. And briefly. But I remember thinking, now this is, you are moving on, and you've been determined not to be the one who has or has had breast cancer, and that's it. You're just Maggie.
Mm-hmm. I look forward to that day.
Yeah. It will come. It will come.
I think what you're all saying is that you need different things at different times. But actually there's something about this emotional support, sort of not feeling alone with what you're going through, that is really important throughout your cancer experience, and actually just as much afterwards maybe as during. In this discussion, we've heard from visitors who are at the end of treatment or post-treatment. You may be in a different place. The Haven offers support at any time during or after treatment, or if your cancer returns.